Wololo. You subscribed now. Well, you should have subscribed because I just converted you. Wait, unless you were already subscribed. Does that mean I just unsubscribed? Wololo. There, we've subscribed you again. That's good. Wait, but what if you now weren't subscribed and did subscribe and then unsubscribe? Just subscribe. It's fine. You subscribe. You sort it out between you. You can do it. You're your own person. You got here for a good reason. And we're about to see that reason. It is going to be Sio versus I Am Avali. Sio in the blue, Avali in the red. And Avali playing as China up against Sio's France here on Le Boulder Bay. And you know why we call it Le Boulder Bay? It is because the French dominate the water 9 times out of 10. And I'm going to stop doing that voice right now before I offend the weird quantity of French people that found their way to my video. But yes, I think it's fair to say that this map is still quite heavily contested by French players, right? The power of the early Hulks, despite the nerfs, hasn't been fully offset. In fact, I feel like a big reason why French are picked less isn't because of the Hulk nerfs. It was because of the nerf to cavalry, more so. And we'll have to see how it comes into play. Because keep in mind that he will be up against China. China are kind of low-key sneaky on the water. I think a lot of people are sleeping on them. Everyone's talking about how amazing Mongols are. I actually think that the Chinese are just as lethal on the water. Their junks are anything but. It's kind of funny how, like, the sleeper pick naval forces genuinely are the sides that call their ships junk. And they end up actually being stronger than most other civs choices, right? So we'll have to see how he plays in this. Because remember, the war junks, they hit incredibly powerful. I believe it's 120 damage with the 900 health pool. So you have slightly less health than Hulks, but you have more damage, right? So I'm kind of intrigued to see how that matchup's going to come out. Of course, the difference being you do have to reach Castle Age compared to the French that will be straight into those Hulks the moment feudal ticks. On this map, by the way, we have been seeing a lot of French players start to go towards Chamber of Commerce now, seeing as School of Cavalry's lost a lot of its value. And I think, especially on War Hybrid maps, there's even less value because you don't really want to commit to an early night rush. And the only other reason you tend to go School of Cavalry is to get scouts to compete on the professional scout side. But if you have access to the waterfront, all you really care about is deep water fish and fishing there, right? So you actually get your food from the waterfront instead, and thus you don't need professional scouts. And that's why I think School of Cavalry is almost worthless on water hybrid type maps. I think it's much better to just go straight into the Chamber of Commerce and scale yourself better, especially on this map. I think you maybe have an argument on certain other hybrid maps, such as Mongolian Heights, shall we say, where you can say, oh, a few Knights raiding is good. But I think on Boulder Bay, 1, the choke points make it harder to raid. 2, more importantly, because of the open sea and how easy it is for French players to take control of it, it becomes a very valuable source of trade, right, with the trade ships. And the Chamber of Commerce is amazing as an opener on Boulder Bay, because if you get to that stage in the game, the Chamber of Commerce guarantees you an extra 30% resource drop-off from your trade ships. Huge booster to your economy, means that you actually need less trade ships effectively to gain a sustainable income, right? Which means you actually free up more of your pop cap to push out military units, which is a very big deal. And even more important when you consider that Boulder Bay is a map that quite often, if you're talking about a game that's going to stagnate, it comes down to the gold veins, right? And who can play towards the center. And that gives you an edge in that you don't actually have to move towards the center. You don't feel pressured. You can step back and still actually combat your opponent. There's a lot of hypotheticals. Opening-wise, on the other side, I think China are going to be going into the Bark in the Sun, most likely to guard their front. We have seen Imperial Academy on this map sometimes, and I wouldn't be surprised if Avali tries for it, just because you probably don't feel pressured early. And also, I think your goal here is to just try and get to castle as quickly as possible. So you have 2 approaches here. Barber can at least guard your dock against Hulk somewhat, but you're not necessarily going to get fleet out. Whereas if you go for the Imperial Academy, you can potentially tech up a minute or 2 sooner, and that means you're able to start fielding war junks quicker. And then possibly you're able to actually just directly counter the Hulk spam of Sio in this game a little bit quicker. And there you go. Chamber of Commerce, as we talked about. It's 10 times better for this map. If you ever actually hold past the choke point as well, it opens up caravan trade. We've actually seen the kind of pivotal bounce back, right? Like, France is one of those civs that isn't bad at holding the central landmass. And that means that in the event that your opponent does force you off the water, you always have a fallback plan of going for caravan trade that you can protect with your land forces. And either way, you will get that extra 30%, as you can see there. And keep in mind, it's resources, right? So you know how, for example, when you trade with ships, you get an additional resource. The thing you can do as France is, select a second resource. You'll get more of that as well. So it means not only is your gold going to be good, but for example, your wood is going to be real good too. Yeah, it is. Just like this Barbing the Sun. So he did go that way. Like I said, I don't think either option is wrong in this situation. Up against France, the early pressure can force you to do this. But this is the way you utilize it correctly. Avali's putting down a second dock in range of this. You can potentially get free here. And the whole concept of this is it protects you long enough that you reach castle. And then you're going to have 2 or 3 docks immediately pushing out war junks. Right? So now the idea is to scale your economy to support that. You not only want to have surplus for the build-up, you want to have that surplus to build those units. Kind of curious, actually, to see if we see him compete on the feudal age, actually. Like, junks, while not absolutely gods here, aren't the greatest of pushovers, right? They have a reasonable health pool. They do okay-ish damage. And, of course, the nerf to the ranged armor on the Hulks means that the archer ships in the early game can do a little bit more damage, right? Because now, remember, the Hulks that the French get have 2 ranged resistance, which means if you're shooting for 5 damage and bursts of 5, right, you're doing 3 damage, 5 attacks, sort of thing, right? Compared to before, where with the old Hulks, what made them completely broken was that if you had a 5 burst attack doing 5 damage each shot, because the Hulks had 6 armor, you were doing 1 damage per shot, which means your full burst was 5. Pretty underwhelming, right, compared to the other number I just gave you, which was 15. So Hulk should be coming out. And he is getting the... Oh, I like this. The additional sales. This is something I don't see enough Hulk spammers do. It's actually an incredibly valuable tech to get. It does take a while, though. And I think that's why a lot of players try not to do it too early. Is because if you only have 2 docks, something we talked about with the Roost that can make them a bit weak at times, if they fail their initial invasion off the back of converting ships, is they need, for example, for Roost to be formidable in the water later on, you need so many different researchers, right? It's not like the French where you just get Hulks. And that puts you at distinct weakness because if you only have 2 docks, you can't really commit them to researching if you have to build up the army to match your opponent's naval output, right? And that's kind of the top balance. So it's cool to see someone go in additional sales early on because this will at least benefit your fishing fleet as well as your Hulk, right? It's not just a one-type gain. And you can see the effect it has, right? Because you sail quicker, you actually turn a little bit quicker as well because of the way it functions. And it's helping him. Starting to sink the fishing fleet already. You can see the junks moving around. We wondered if Avali was going to play hard into this. He now has 4 junks versus 1 Hulk. But it's not a good trade, right? Because it's 8 damage, 2 bursts. So you, 12 damage? Yeah, you can see how it's kind of painful. You're going to need to probably have about 5 junks per Hulk to feel good about this. And I don't know how feasible that is for Avali. He does at least have the movement speed at the moment, but that's the other thing about going for those sails. It's easier for Sio to keep up with his opponent as he retreats. Yes, it's still superior movement speed for the junks at 1.5, but the Hulks become a little bit more competitive at 1.29 tiles per second. And now, yeah, he's just amassing them. So he really is all in on this. It's a cool idea, right? Because the alternative is you accept that you're going to allow France to at least get to Castle Age, and then you're going to try to fight them, right? With some very powerful war junks. The alternative is you just all in on the feudal, and you force him off after he's heavily invested in the fishing economy. And keep in mind that these junks aren't actually that pricey, right? It's 120 wood, 90 gold. Compare that to what the French player is paying. Sio is paying 300 wood and 240 gold. And he's being outproduced right now, right? Because these Hulks take longer to produce, 45 seconds compared to 29, and you're equally matched on the docks, right? And in fact, if he wanted, Avali could put down a 3rd dock and support it. Here we go. 4 Hulks against 9. I think this is too early for Avali. He needs more. He's backing up. More just sailing out. Needs more to be sunk. And you can see he's pinned in. Barbican is protected for the moment. He's getting some shots out. He just needs to engage. He needs to actually push forward. If anything, he needs to micro them better, right? They're just stopping and they're not firing. Which means not all of them are attacking the same target. Some of them are just standing there doing nothing. But he does have home field, remember. So Sio, any damage done here is perma. Because he's so far away from being able to heal them. That's why he's just trying to get them down to half HP. Decent damage in this number. I like this play out of Avali. Just kind of proving that you can compete with the Hulks in feudal. Yes, he's not sinking them, but what he's also doing is he's not giving ground. I say that. He's basically pinned between two docks, but the point is that he's not giving up the water, right? He's still got fishing vessels here. He's still pushing back the Hulk spamming opponent. The problem is Show is now scaling his economy, so he'll be able to regularly push out Hulks out of both of these docks. And how does Avali respond? Straight into the Song Dynasty. Important to this, now able to tax more, gather more, right, with the Imperial officials, but also, more importantly, he's going to be able to ramp up his villager production, building them quicker now at 13 seconds, which means he's able to compete with the French player. Because remember, France do produce their villagers quicker by 1 second for every age. Currently, every 17 seconds pushing out a villager here in Xiu's lines. And you can see Xiu already had an edge because of that. But that's now going to start to draw it back towards Avali. And Avali pushing in. Needs to retreat, though. Remember, he can get away quicker. So he will escape. Loses one more in the outro, though. And that's 7 Hulks versus 13. Avali jumping the gun there. I mean, obviously, you're going to eventually reach a pop cap where you have to go, but I don't think you have to rush to the degree he did. And I do feel like he's missing a trick in the additional sails. The additional sails would allow him to gap close, and the difference is an extra volley of shots coming out from these Hulks, which basically equals 1 or 2 extra ships being sunk, right? Because your junks only have 650 health. I think he needs sails. It's kind of baffling to me that he hasn't built into sails. Also baffling that he hasn't gone for a third dock. I think the third dock reasoning is that if he was to build it close enough that it's protected by the Barb in the sun, it means that he'd be getting rid of nearby shoreline fish, which means that his fishing line then has to go out into dangerous territory, right? So that's why he doesn't do that. But yeah, I just can't agree with no additional sails. I think it's just too good here. You have to realize your opponent built additional sails too, right? Like, I don't know if he's feeling it in these engagements that Xiu is moving quicker. But as I said, it means that he keeps out of range of you for probably 2 more volleys at this stage. And that means that numerical advantage you have is somewhat disintegrated, right? In fact, you're not even doubling him up and you're going for this attack. Avali moving in. Instantly has to retreat again. Pulls back for the moment. He's trying to stay out of range of half of the fleet, but it's not good enough. He will at least be able to back away. And Xiu, I don't think he's in any rush here. Like, he can kind of chill somewhat. But he's going to start to move out. With 10 of these Hulks now, you can instantly sink any of these ships. So the repair factor doesn't even matter. And Avali, I think he kind of made a mistake pushing out like that. So many damaged ships now. Now 1 Hulk goes forward, the others stay back. And this is the thing that Xiu's going to do. He'll cycle the injured ones to the back and then have a fresh one at the front. And it's easier for him to micro than it is for Avali. Because all he has to do is drag one to the back and then draw circles. And you can see it. It's just so easy for him. Avali, though, is going for the tech up now. And Xiu isn't ready. Remember, he heavily invested. The gold investment here is much more pricey for him. 90 compared to the 240 per ship. Xiu not looking like he wants to tech up. He's still just pushing more Hulks. 3 docks worth means he's going to be stunted on his growth. And this means that Avali can bounce back on the water. Remember what we talk about when it comes to water combat in this game. The biggest way to switch the game around is genuinely tech up. The difference between, obviously, the most obvious one is Dark Age and Feudal, right? That's the switch around. Against daily players, you have to reach Feudal. Then when you're talking about Feudal to Castle, if you lose on the Feudal, you can actually come back on the Castle. Castle to Imperial is weaker. It's not as easy to bounce back on. But the more important one is the one Avali's about to hit. As Castle Age is reached, he can now go straight into the War Junks, and in fact is going back for the extra hammocks. So now, look, he's going to get the extra 2 volleys of arrows coming out. This is going to be an incredible DPS increase if he's allowed to research in time, because he has so many of these junks. 25, in fact. And Xiu, he realizes that he has to pressure it now. He can't let his opponent sit there and do whatever he wants. So he sinks a few of them. Back up again. Still needs, what? Yeah, 20 seconds. 20 seconds till the hammock's ready. He's going to be forced to engage. Finally gets through one of these Hulks. Remember these Hulks, any injuries done here are perma. Because they're definitely not making it back to base without being sunk. With this many ships here on top of you. The junks, they're holding back. 21 now compared to the 12. Almost an equal number lost on both sides. And that means an advantage for Avali. And Avali, hammocks are now complete. And now he can go. Look at the arrows. Junks go. Brrr, and you feel the pain. One by one, Xiu is losing the fleet. The fleet that moves slow on the retreat. Avali down to 11 here. But Xiu, heavy injuries on his 10. And he's going to lose a few more on the retreat. And he might expose his fishing economy as well, and that's a problem. He did at least secure the tech up. Xiu now has it underway with the guild hall being built. He does make it back to his shores. His fishermen are going to be forced back onto the shoreline fish, though. And it looks like Avali's happy with that for the moment. He hit the critical timing, right? The problem is his opponent is now teching up. So really, he needs to be switching over into War Junks, I feel like. But he's not. He's still going for Junks. Reason being is War Junks is just too pricey for him at this stage. He wants to just try and Zerg his opponent off the water, right? And it's understandable. You went in for this tech. You're now incredibly scary with all that additional burst damage coming out. He feels like this should be good enough. And he might be right. Keep in mind that France doesn't really get a booster to their attack in the next stage, right? Because in this situation, if you're going into Castle Age, France's next move is demo ships. Demo ships aren't going to be that great when your opponent is only building into these archer ships, right? This is why Avali is sticking on these archer ships, by the way. It counters out everything that's coming. And he thinks it can counter out what's here now. New Age reached. Hulk's being targeted down. These cycle attacks, though, the decimation! Avali almost losing the entire fleet there. Representing just how stupidly powerful the Hulks still are. And it really does come down to the cycling. The cycling is just too goddamn good for the Hulks. Just draw in circles, and if your opponent's coming to you, easy peasy. If you have superior range, which against most of these type of units you do, it's 5 tile ranges, what, compared to the, 6 tile ranges. You're always going to lose out. And that's why I wanted to see him switch it up. But instead, he makes a different choice. This choice I can at least respect, but this choice should have happened before you went back in. He's going for Navigator Lookout now. And you can see what it does there, right? It's not just the sight, it's more important than the weapon range. He's now going to have the range of the Hulks, which means he won't have to deal with losing 3-4 ships before he gets in range of his opponent, right? And that could be a difference maker. It also means that when he engages, he's going to be able to get more units effectively shooting immediately onto a target compared to before, where we see half the time Avali's troops get stuck on each other and have to push around the sides. So, heavy into the stables now. So he's ready to get aggressive on land. He's still confident about his position on the water, and why wouldn't he be, right? He just held back Avali again. Avali so quick to rebuild these junks at 29 seconds apiece with 3 docks working on it. And no walling in is the surprising part to me from Avali. Avali should know that there's a risk his opponent could come on land. And he's showing no intent of being present on land himself, right? He's fleeing on the water. He wouldn't be able to afford it. So you have to understand that your opponent, while he's occasionally still building Hulks, he hasn't been as hard-pressed as you. He's also been going heavier onto the deep fish than you have. Like, this is all info you have available. So to not wall up does feel like a big error to me. And here come the Knights. One by one they ride. Meanwhile, naval warfare is underway. Avali moving in. So, a little bit more worried now. The amount of arrows going out in these bursts. The Hulks sinking a lot quicker than they did last time. Avali, a lot more healthy ships this time around. And even with the home field advantage, just look how Avali is zerging through him now. So, he can't replace these quick enough. He's down to 9 already. A lot of heavy damage onto the Chinese fleet, but the Chinese fleet is reigning supreme right now. As remember, when you do these cycle rotations, you don't target, right? You just take a random auto attack, and it's being spread evenly between the ships, which means Avali still has more effective DPS in the field than he should. Pushing in with more of these junk ships. Hulks will come out ahead again, but it's a big dent in the fleet. And remember, Avali, he's able to trickle out and replace these quicker than Sho is. But Sho, he has other ideas, remember. It's 4 docks now for Avali, and that revelation means Sho should be confident about being on land. He's running in with Knights now, and the archer ships will not be able to stop it. And the Hulks are coming to pay homage to the Chinese. Sho still feeling healthy with 8 on the water here versus the 7 junk ships. Decent damage being done. Not really able to stick on one target, though. He just doesn't have enough ships to push in, and it means he has to fully back off. And Sho is going to do the same, surprisingly enough here. Considering he has 8, he could easily start sieging through these docks and getting rid of the fishing boats. But he doesn't want to risk sacrificing all water control, right? Because that is the potential risk that's associated there. I think it's only about a 20-30% risk that you end up losing control of the water versus the upkeep, right? The uptake, rather, the opportunity to like push your opponent off. But Sho doesn't feel like it's worth the risk. I think from his perspective, he feels like his economy is doing better in water, and his opponent is having to replace a lot more ships than he is. So he doesn't want to be forced to have to double down the replacement rate of the Hulks. Instead, identifying that he can afford Knights and ships, his opponent right now can only afford ships. And that is why, finally, we're going to see the walls being dropped by Avali. And luckily for him, the Knights did not manage to do much damage. And now look at this, the TC expansion out of Avali. So Xiu 75, Avli just behind him on 70, but this is going to allow him to boom past, remember. He's stuck on the Song Dynasty, so he zooms right through this. And remember, if you ever go for the Ming Dynasty, that's your bounce back on land that Avli will have access to. So far, only getting a few Spearmen, though. He could opt into the Palace Guard. Palace Guard are actually quite surprisingly effective against the Knights, just courtesy of going into Ming Dynasty and the movement speed they get, being about 0.0506 difference between Knights and Palace Guard means that you can keep on top of them and actually outmobilize them. And keep in mind that you're a heavily armored unit, so you actually don't care that much about the Knights' damage. Now I like this. Avli finally going into some explosive junks. He realizes that this is not working with junks alone. He needs a composition. And the advantage you do have against France, as we mentioned, because you're going for these archer ships, the only composition available to a French player in Castle Age is hulks and incendiary boats, right? And these incendiary ships, these demo ships, will not be very effective when you've got that many junks that have also been buffed up shooting against you. And look at the use of the stealth! Xiu, he's going to get caught off guard by this. He's actually moving closer to it. Avli, buying his time. He's going to retreat. He's going to bait his opponent in. And this is working perfectly from Avli. He's going to sneak right into it. Xiu exposes his Hulk line. Doesn't lose many, though. He minimizes his casualties there. A nice idea by Avli, but not quick enough to move in. Means that Xiu still has advantage here. Dodges a bullet there. That could have been half of his fleet just sunk at the bottom of the ocean. Xiu, not that easily tricked. Not that easily overwhelmed. And now moving in with a superior number of hulks. The initial damage to the junks means that Avli put himself at a disadvantage. This was a gambit play, and it did not work out. And with so many hulks now, you can see the only move Avli has is to try and flank around to the sides and do some eco damage with what little ships he has left. So, instead of going for the throat, instead of taking out the docks, he decides to address that. But he forgot about the two to the north. And remember, these extra burst attacks, the fishing vessels are going to be sunk quickly here. But double Hulk comes out, and that should be the end of the raiding efforts of the Chinese pirates. And I think he's finally done it. I don't think Avli can keep pushing out like this, right? Like, he's lost one of the docks. He's trying to build the demo ships now. But these Hulks will seize through your docks so quickly. And one demo ship at a time will not win you this game. And it will definitely not win you this lake. There you go. Hulks finish their work. Now they can move across. He'll probably look to keep a few Hulks in the water and sink the rest just to guard the coast, because now Avli is forced entirely off the water. The good news, at least, if you're a China fanboy here, is he's somewhat prepped for it, right? Avli's economy is ahead now of Xiu's because he built the second TC and then into the third alongside the Song Dynasty benefits. Means that he's about to crack the 100 eco mark, and none of this is fishing boats. But if you're a French fanboy and you want a little bounce back on the other side, I will point out that this now frees up the sea for Xiu to trade with. And I really want to see him get into these trade ships instantaneously. He doesn't need anything else on the water. He's well guarded now. And even sinking the barbican next. So, forward base coming out. Like this move from Avli, I think a lot of players' mistakes in this situation would be to hang back and not build up the racks infrastructure. It will be scouted out now by Xiu, but it's already in place, right? And it's actually sizable enough that you won't necessarily be able to stop this. Another thing that Avli utilized here, by the way, barely any villagers coming out to do this, but that rapid increased build speed of China is allowing him to build this whole base up so quickly. There you go, landmark down. And we should just see it spread out. Probably half this fleet could be sunk, and then the other half put on coastal duty. I would prefer that, and I would love to then just see Xiu start to build the trade ships. And there you go. Already queuing them up. Needs to waypoint them across, but he'll make a lot of golden wood off this. And that's the bounce back of the Chamber of Commerce, right? That's why it's so important, and that's why he wasn't looking for a cheeky quick rush. He tried it a few nights occasionally, yes, but it was always about controlling sea. Because Boulder Bay, if you're playing France, sea is the way you win the game. More than anything else. Now keeps being dropped by Avli. He understands the importance of this, right? Because this is surrendered the sea, he can't get a Sacred Site victory condition. But Xiu could. So he wants to beat him to the punchline, set up an entire forward line here, and ensure that he can never double cap the Sacred Sites. Oh, nice value out of the small group of spears as well. Hulk was camped here, so loses one. Barely gets the value. Now trade begins. And then you have to question who's ready for a tech up, right? Neither of them look ready. I say that. Xiu is. He's underway. I thought I thought in his food front he was looking bad, but that's because he already spent it. So, Xiao, about to complete the College of Artillery. Then you get this Royal Cannons, amazing at just deleting all of the keeps that China can rapidly build. Meanwhile, Avali, because he hung around, right, because he went for the TC booming, because he had to adapt his economy, he's not ready himself. And he probably won't be for a few more minutes. He has a ridiculous surplus of gold. The question is whether he's going to trade it for the food. He's going to catch up on food quickly, mind you, because look at the amount of farms he's now dropped. Interesting that he actually positions them like this, because obviously the optimal route is meant to be 8 farms around, or sometimes you can do this one where you do 9 farms around a mill. Instead, he's stuck them even further out. I think the reason for this, by the way, and I think this is a kind of China exclusive thing that is very valuable, is it means that more gold is being dropped off into one mill. Also, keep in mind that as China, you want to oversee fewer mills because you want to get that extra drop-off, right, with the supervise. That's why he does this, so that basically if he had the correct number of mills for like just the amount of farms around it, it would actually mean that he'd be sacrificing increased food drop-offs as well as additional gold trickle, right? Because you have a finite amount of imperial officials. You can only have 4. In fact, he still only has 3. And it means that them running around and taxing off of double the amount of mills is harder to sustain at all times. So cool little detail there to keep in mind, folks, when you're playing China. It's always fun to find these kind of utilizations, these optimizations, right? Because I think another one that people often talk about is wheelbarrow being worthless. We see that Avali doesn't feel that way, as he has grabbed wheelbarrow. But I remember, I think it was Age of Noob done a great video about the tinfoil hat conspiracy theories about how wheelbarrow costs you resources. And there was some credence towards it, some truth, but overall, wheelbarrow is just too good not to get. In fact, I think both players got it right. There's no way Sio ignored it. If I can find a mill. The fact I can't find a mill is suggesting he did ignore it. Huh. Yeah, he did. That's missed value. Especially in these wood lines as you chop in deeper, right? In fact, if we look at the income per minute, yeah, Avali's ahead on food drastically. Wood, Xiao is competitive, but Xiao has 20 more workers on it and is barely ahead. This is the power of wheelbarrow, folks. Don't underrate it. I think he hasn't been doing any tech upgrades, right? Okay, no. He has been doing the wood ones. He hasn't got the final level, though. And he done none on the picks, so he's kind of slow on the gathering rates. Double keep down now. Avali already getting onto these gold lines. Looking to tap that all out, and then Spirit Way. Spirit Way here is interesting. He's got some room for stables, but he's actually used a lot of his infrastructure space for other things. It could be that he's thinking about Zhignu. I doubt it, though. It also could be that he's thinking Grenadiers. We don't ever see Grenadiers. I don't think we've once seen Grenadiers. The reason being it costs you 2,400 food and 1,200 gold to get access to. Doesn't make it that sexy of a proposition, right? Especially when you're reaching a stage in the game where gold can quickly become a limiting factor, especially here on Boulder Bay for the Chinese. And instead, we are going to see Ming Dynasty, as we always do. That's the other thing which, by the way, is preventing people from really going up. Sorry, no. Yeah, is it Ming Dynasty? I'm pretty sure it's Ming. I'm getting them mixed up. Yuan Dynasty. Yes, Yuan Dynasty. The reason we don't see Ming Dynasty is simply because 10% health versus 15% movement speed sucks. 15% movement speed is vastly superior. The combat effectiveness of it vastly outweighs that of an extra 10% health. And now just look at it. Juiced up, moving in. He's got the pass guard coming out. 1.58 movement speed per second. Spearman just as quick as well. The keep is going to be dropped successfully, but he can get through these hand cannons fairly fast. However, with the support of the keep, it looks like he's being repelled. So Avali needs a bigger army than this. Let's go. Good heads-up play to go into the hand cannoneers. He can support this, right? He's got the trade coming in. A decent amount as well. He's getting on average about 40 wood, 80 gold per. He needs to actually set up a dock further down. He easily could do down here, and then he'd be getting easily over 100. Because remember, it's exponential. The longer the route, the more you gain. And it's worth going a longer route. Double Keep is at least going to keep Sio back for the moment. He's only got Culverin. He hasn't built into siege weapons. On the eco count, they are matched. So Xiao, you can see he can move this force up. He can afford to lose it if something goes wrong. He can also use it to aggressively keep. Something that he has actually got surplus for after gathering from both of these stone outcroppings. And he needs to be fast to push in here because right now Avali is getting the most value, right? He took controller here. He actually dictates what happens around the center gold veins. And now with the bombards, is doing the exact same thing with the defenses. The Culverin's trying to move in. Repairs are good, but not good enough. And the Culverin, remember, it can't snipe these quickly because these are Clock Tower Bombards. And these Clock Tower Bombards could snipe your Culverin. They're not going to do it just yet. They are now. Yo, this was mismanaged. That's costly to lose, right? So Bombard damage is going to be repaired. And then the Culverin dies. That's 1,000 resources just wasted. Not to mention the 800 on the keep, which you didn't protect. And there's a little bit of a problem for Xiao, because one thing to highlight is while you do have control of the water, how much of your pop cap is locked into that, right? These hulks aren't cheap on that front. They're 4 each. And if we quickly select through this, because he has to keep them on the coastline, always patrolling, because now he's invested on the water with the trade to protect it, that's 12, right? So 48 of his military pop cap, which is limited 200, is invested in guarding the coast. That's a huge loss of effective force in these land battles, right? These land battles that Avali has access to, he's never exposed towards the waterfront. And this is where you have to balance the way you play Boulder Bay better. I don't like that Xiao has so many ships here pointlessly. Half of these ships are irrelevant. You could remove them and you still be in control of the water. And I don't know why he hasn't. I guess it's about the Sacred Site, but the Sacred Site's already capped. You haven't stopped that from occurring. So you're not actually doing anything with these Hulk ships at all, except stopping yourself from having full cap in a late game situation, which you're now reaching. And his army is pathetically small. And Battering Rams is not a great solution here. Also, keep in mind he went into Spearmen and Hand Cannoneers. Hand Cannoneers and Spearmen get destroyed by Zhuge Nu. Zhuge Nu, yes, they are somewhat short range, 4.5 compared to Hand Cannoneers are 4, right? Which means they're going to be in range of the Zhuge Nu at all times. And the Zhuge Nu benefit against unarmored, right? 7 damage, 3 burst. That means they're going to hit you for 21 damage, and you have next to no protection. In fact, no protection at all on any of these units. And Zhuge Nu are a lot more cost-effective than Hand Cannoneers. Charge in. Start to engage. The Gatling gun line is good. Avali is overwhelming Xiao, and Xiao, just look how pathetic his forces are in comparison. The Zhuge Nu more cost-effective by far and superior to the Hand Cannoneers. The Hand Cannoneers that stop off for around 100, because that's the only thing they can beat in this batch, is a bunch of deer. They can't beat the Chinese at all. He's pushing in. With 5 bombards, your villager line exposed, and Xiao's still not scuttling these ships, only now doing it. This game looks over. He doesn't have the military infrastructure to push out quick enough. He doesn't have the surplus. He's out of food entirely. He didn't transition on land. He didn't scale on the water at all. It was all about trade, which means with food being his limiting factor, he has no army to defend himself. And what a play from Avali, from being pushed off of the lake entirely, to getting that 4th base down so quickly, Xiao not anticipating that, not being ready for it, and stubbornly refusing to transition his on-land economy to a situation where he can guard against this. He falls victim to the early game Zhuge Nu in the late game. What a play from Avali. So, by the way, guys, just to confirm this, Avali is a talented player. He's actually an Age of Mythology player, and although he's only earned $460 there, that's mainly because Age of Mythology doesn't have any tournaments. He still played quite well there, and he definitely played incredibly well here. So I'm excited to see more of him on the channel. He'll definitely be featuring more on this channel. And if you want to see him feature on this channel more, and if you want to feature yourself on this channel, make sure that you follow me on all the channels down below. Because if you come watch us on Twitch, you could be here on one of these outros right now saying hi YouTube or something along those regards. Not to mention the fact that there is already over 100 other Age of Empires videos featuring multiple pros from different games and a bunch of people from the top 100 that we've commentated in the last month, and they can all be viewed here in the playlist. Don't forget to subscribe here in the meantime, though, so you can see all the YouTube videos as they go live. We post 3 a day, so there's plenty of stuff for you to consume. Hopefully, we'll have you hanging around. Hopefully, we'll catch you on the live stream soon. Thank you for watching.